Welcome to the Workplace Minute, powered by H3HR Advisors and sponsored by Paychex, one of the leading providers of HR, payroll, retirement, and software solutions for businesses of all sizes. My name is Steve Boese. Retired billionaire thinks you should not be working from home. Former Google CEO Eric Schmidt has a complaint about his old company, and it's one that employees across America are increasingly hearing from executives. Workers aren't coming into the office enough. The billionaire investor who led Google from 2001 to 2011 and remained on as its executive chairman until 2015 made his feelings on remote work clear when speaking to a class at Stanford in a video that was recently posted by the University School of Engineering. In the video, Professor Eric Brynjolfsson interviewed former Google exec before the Stanford students had a turn. It was one of the professor's questions that got Schmidt opening up about the problems with remote work. The professor brought up Google's breakthrough artificial intelligence discovery from 2017, the creation of the so-called transformer. This is a kind of technology that helps power much of the AI research behind today's products, and it's also the T in the popular AI tool ChatGPT. Then the professor stated a common criticism of recent Google performance. The idea that despite that early lead, the venerable tech company has fallen behind in AI development. They've kind of lost the initiative to OpenAI, and even the last leaderboard I saw, Anthropic's Claude was at the very top of the list, the professor said. I asked Google CEO Sundar Pichai about this, and he really didn't give me a sharp answer. Maybe you have a sharper or more objective explanation for what's going on there at Google, the professor said. Schmidt, after noting that he's no longer an employee of the company, began his version of the old man yells at cloud speech, but fixated on remote work, flexibility, and the crazy idea of work-life balance. Schmidt said, Google decided that work-life balance and going home early and working from home was more important than winning. And the reason startups work is people work like hell. I'm sorry to be so blunt, Schmidt continued, but the fact of the matter is, if you all leave the university and go found a company, you're not going to let people work from home and only come in one day a week if you want to compete against all the other startups. And it's also worth noting that the 1 day a week in the office requirement is inaccurate. Google started requiring workers to come into the offices 3 days a week back in 2022, according to reporting at the time. Schmidt then said that there's a history in tech of dominant companies missing out on the next wave of innovation in their industry, and he played up the importance of crazy ideas and hard-charging founders like Elon Musk. He also praised Taiwan Semiconductor and said that the massive chip maker has a rule that any new PhD hires must work in the factory floor, even on the basement floor. Now you can imagine getting American physicists to do that, Schmidt asked? PhDs? Highly unlikely. It's a different work ethic. With these statements, Schmidt cements his place in the two distinct groups of leaders, or in his case former leaders of large organizations who have taken steps to reduce or eliminate remote working, which swept across the working world during the pandemic. The first group are the leaders who use remote work as the scapegoat or rationale for poor business performance. Recently here on the Workplace Minute, we discussed that phenomenon in a story about software giant Salesforce and their cost to increase in-office work in response to sluggish revenue and profit growth, despite there being no real data or evidence to support those decisions. But this group of leaders might be forgiven since they've got to do something when results are not meeting expectations. But the other group that Schmidt seems even more aligned with is the collection of CEOs and leaders who see remote and flexible work as fake work somehow, or not as valuable or legitimate as in-person work. Remote work is a perk to be taken away from employees as soon as is justifiable. After all, leaders like Schmidt reason, I rose in my career by showing up to the office, coming in early, working late, doing the metaphorical sleeping on the factory floor routine. Never mind that once leaders like Schmidt climb to the ranks to the CEO's office, they are largely insulated from the many challenges and stressors that in-person working places on average employees. Things like onerous commutes that don't include chauffeured cars or helicopters, balancing childcare needs, absent nannies, or other personal staff, and having to stop and pick up groceries or prescriptions on the way home from work. I imagine most CEOs like Schmidt have someone else handling these mundane chores of life. The work from home versus in-office debates and arguments are seemingly going on without end, at least as long as the worldviews of leaders like Schmidt remain rooted in the past. Remote working never really took off until the pandemic forced the hands of leaders. No matter how disinclined they were to the idea, they had to embrace remote and later hybrid working in order to keep their businesses operational. But so many of them never truly bought in, never really wanted remote work to take off, never wanted to allow employees to have that much control over their working arrangements. And now here we are in the back half of 2024, with the pandemic a memory for the most part, a softening labor market, and lingering concerns about inflation and slower overall growth. These leaders are much more empowered to call workers back into the office and deride the entire concept of remote and flexible working as an aberration, not to be continued. We will continue to follow this story and all the important topics and trends in the world of work here on the HR Happy Hour Media Network. That's it for the Workplace Minute, powered by H3 HR Advisors.